Hey friends, Lynn with Right For You Content Creation, and I'm super excited to bring you this video because I have my clients ask me this question a lot. Do you need an audience to start a podcast? And the short answer is no, you don't need an audience to start a podcast. And while a lot of famous people and persons have started a podcast, they have brought their listeners over to their podcast, but you truly don't need an audience to start a podcast. You can be like me, where I started my first podcast 4 years ago, Travel Gluten Free, and I had 0 followers. I didn't even have a blog. I had nobody. And I started my podcast and people started listening. And now I get over 2,000 downloads a month. And I have a lot of listeners and I've got a lot of people on my Instagram. And so I just organically built it over the past 4 years. And so that's basically what I did. So you don't need an audience to start a podcast, but what you do need is you do need a good topic that people are looking for. And one of the ways you can do that is to see what other people are podcasting about, and then pick something a little bit different or a little bit more niche. So while travel is something a lot of people talk about, I'm the only podcast that talks about being gluten-free while you're traveling, and I have celiac disease. And so if I eat gluten while I'm traveling, I get extremely sick. And I thought, I'm not the only person who has celiac disease or can't eat gluten for whatever reason and loves to travel. There's got to be other people out there in this world of 7 billion that love to travel, but they can't eat gluten. So that's why I started my podcast, is to help other people who can't eat gluten and love to travel. And it's been really great because last year I was at my first post-COVID, well, not post-COVID, COVID was still going on, but my first conference, my first live conference for gluten free. And I was selling my book, The Guide to Traveling Gluten Free. And I had a couple come up to me who had met me 3 years ago at that same gluten-free conference. And they said it inspired them to travel. And they had taken their first trip because they were listening to my podcast on a weekly basis. And that was made me feel really great, because that's the whole purpose of doing a podcast, is to educate and help others. You can also sell your products on a podcast too. So podcasts are really great for if you have a product or service that you're selling, because you can pitch that in your mid-roll. You can talk about it at the beginning of your podcast, whatever you like. And I also help with podcast consultation and podcast productions. One of the things I'm known for in the podcasting community is the show notes queen, because I write lots and lots of show notes. So if you're interested in helping you write with show notes, or launching your podcast in 30 days or less, or if you have a podcast and you love a podcast audit, or you just like me to come on and help you with some marketing aspects of your podcast, I can totally do that for you and be glad to help. So please come on over to rightforyou.me and check out my forum where you can contact me and we can get in touch. And I would love to help you with your podcast, even if it's launching, or you just need ideas. I can help you whittle down those ideas, because one of the things you don't want to do with your podcast is you don't want to have a very broad topic. You want it to be very, very niche. Like, for example, my podcast, Travel Gluten Free, is one. The other one I have is the Digital Marketing Hot Seat. So not just digital marketing, but my co-host Mark and I come on and we bring on other guests, we interview them, and then they ask us a digital marketing question. So it's kind of like the reverse of an interview, where we're asking them questions. And so that's really cool, because I decided to make the format a little bit more different to make it more exciting. And so you have to have a niche podcast. So for example, in the digital marketing realm, there is another gal, her name is, I think, Corianne, and she has the digital marketing for farmers. So if you're a farmer, her podcast is great, because she specializes in farming and how to market your farm and do CSAs and cooperatives and things like that. So you want to really have it niche down. So check out the other podcasts that are already out there in your field and pick a sub niche that you have an expertise on that no one else is talking about. And it's really great and easy to do, because a lot of people, while there are a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of people would pod fade, which means they stop making their podcast after 7 episodes. So you have usually a really good market out there, but it does take a lot of time and effort and organization for your podcast production. So don't think if you have a half-an-hour show once a week, you're going to work for half an hour. That half-an-hour show once a week is going to take you 4 to 5 hours if you're properly promoting it and you're producing it yourself. So if you need any help with that, come on over at lynn@rightforyou.me and email me, and I will be glad to help you out with that. All right, my friends, remember to subscribe to the channel and also like this video, and I will see you next week.